My name is Bert, and this is the Still Life Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Still Life Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bert. If I sound like I'm out of breath and hoarse, it's because I am both. I spent about the last 6 hours rearranging and reorganizing my children's bedrooms. I feel like in those 2 small rooms, there was enough stuff to fill my entire house. I don't know how that's possible. An almost 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 16-year-old. How do they have so much stuff, and how is it packed so tightly into those bedrooms? I will never understand it. I mean, I feel like if I got each of my kids their own studio apartment and just moved everything out of their bedrooms into the studio apartments, they would all be fully furnished. I wouldn't have to buy anything. There's so much stuff. I just don't understand it. I mean, at one point I took everything out of one of the bedrooms just so I could clean the floors and everything, and my living room is about 3 times the size of the bedroom, yet the living room was completely full. I just don't understand how all that stuff fit into one bedroom. I just don't get it. It's like once you take it out of the bedroom, it just expands and multiplies. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, still fighting this allergy stuff, still a little bit hoarse, still got a sore throat a little bit. Just been trying to drink a ton of water and just get rid of all this crud that's in my sinuses because I'm over it. I'm just tired of it. But unfortunately, it's this time of year. When that humidity kicks up, it just holds all that crud in the air, and then I absorb all of it into my sinuses. So, I'm actually looking forward to the fall. Summer was always my favorite, and now it's like I'm good up until about mid to late May, and then I'm ready for like late September, early October to get here. Not to say that I don't look forward to summer, because I certainly do. Obviously, it's perfect fishing weather, getting out early in the morning or in the evenings, chasing after the bass bite. But, outside of that, in the middle of the day, it's just awful. It's offensively hot and humid outside. So, I try to stay inside as much as possible. Now, when I've got the kids during the week, of course, they're going to want to go out and swim and do stuff like that. And we'll see. I may sit inside and just watch them through the window play outside and go outside every hour to reapply sunscreen. Otherwise, I don't plan on spending a ton of time outside, mostly because of my allergies. The heat and humidity isn't my favorite, but the allergy thing just really makes it suck. But yeah, I had another rough night last night. It was like I would fall asleep on my right side, then wake up 45 minutes to an hour later and have to roll over to my left side because my sinuses were all clogged up on one side. And then I'd wake up the next hour and have to lay on my back or, prop myself up or whatever and change positions. And then, of course, it would take me 30 to 45 minutes to fall back asleep. So I had a pretty restless night, and this is like the 4th night in a row, and I am wiped out. I mean, I'm tired from the time I, not even wake up, from the time I decide to get up out of bed because I've been awake for so long, until the time that I go to bed at night. And so it's like, at what point will I finally be exhausted to the point that I just sleep through whatever? Because I desperately need that right now. I've forgotten multiple times what day it is, what time it is. Like, I'll look at the clock 4 times and be like, oh, I forgot to see what time it was when I just looked at the clock. I've made, I don't know how many lists for the grocery store, and I can't remember where I've put any of them. So I've got like 6 lists going, and they all say like the same 3 things. I've just reached that point of exhaustion where I'm just like in delirium and have no clue what's really going on. I could be dreaming all this. I honestly don't know. But moving right along, I'm going to talk about, I guess, the one thing that everybody else is talking about, and I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. The Mayweather-Logan Paul fight. It was, at best, a disappointment. I mean, at the end of the day, Mayweather made Paul look like a mediocre boxer. I mean, so I guess mission accomplished. They both made a crap ton of money. It doesn't hurt anybody's reputation at all. They both won while we all lost. So I guess at the end of the day, good on them for going out and making a bunch of money and fooling all of us that they were actually going to have a legit boxing match. So we definitely came out the losers on that one. Now, will the same thing happen with Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley? I don't think so. I think there's some legitimate bad blood there. So I think it's going to be a brawl. I really think that Tyron Woodley has the edge. I mean, he is the crafty veteran in this instance. And while it is a pure boxing match, you know, we know that he has knockout power. And, of course, yeah, you can say Jake Paul has knockout power, but look at who he's fought. I mean, let's be honest here. Ben Askren was coming off of 2 hip surgeries, was pretty well out of shape for the most part, and definitely isn't known for having great hands. So it wasn't much of a contest. And, I mean, if you catch anybody clean, you got a chance at knocking them down. But I honestly feel like at the level that Ben Askren was at, I probably could have gone in there in the shape that I'm in, which isn't great, and probably could have fared pretty well in a straight-up boxing match. So, I don't really give Jake Paul any credit on that. Tyron Woodley is in much better shape. He's been active for a while. He's not coming off of any major surgeries. So this is going to be more of a legitimate competition. And I really think going into this, Tyron Woodley has the edge. And, of course, I would love to see him knock Jake Paul out. And as much as Jake Paul annoys the absolute crud out of me, you got to give credit where credit's due. The guy is a self-promoting, self-marketing wizard. I mean, he's done it so well. Can't fault him for that. I mean, look at the draw that he's pulling in, running his mouth, talking trash, doing these silly crossover MMA to boxing fights. If you really want to legitimately challenge yourself, Jake Paul, step into a cage, put on some 4-ounce MMA gloves, and frickin' go to work. Get out of your element and get into somebody else's. You're not going to challenge yourself by staying in your element and bringing guys out of their element into yours. You'll have, for the most part, a natural advantage every time. I mean, in MMA, he's at light heavyweight. So putting him in there with some of the current light heavyweights in Bellator or the UFC, he doesn't stand a chance. Even against a smaller guy like a Nick or a Nate Diaz, I think they would just completely obliterate him and pick him to pieces. Their boxing is phenomenal. Their ground game is phenomenal. And those guys are just in incredible shape all the time. You could call them up today, they could fight tomorrow, and they're ready to go. These guys don't need fight camps because they're ready 24/7. Even though Paul would have a massive weight advantage, I think these guys would just outclass him and outskill him. Now, I understand that, there's a lot more money to be made on the boxing side, but, if you get Mayweather Promotions or even Triller or whoever to put on an MMA fight, you could pay and still make a nice payday versus going through a Bellator or UFC where these guys are making a mere fraction of what guys in boxing are making. So yeah, I mean, from a pay perspective, I understand why boxing over MMA, but at the same time, go with a promotion that was going to put out the money for the fight. And I mean, with all the talk going on in the mixed martial arts world about fighter pay, I got to agree with these guys. The guys that are putting their bodies, their health, their brains out there on the line day in and day out to compete ought to be making a lot more money. Now, with that said, they know what they're getting into, and some of those guys make pretty good paydays, but when you factor in trainers, gym time, travel expenses, lodging, meals, nutritionists, whether it's chiropractors, acupuncturists, massages, self-care, all those things to stay healthy. At the end of the day, a lot of these guys aren't making that much money after they pay out. Whereas, if you're making several $1 million a fight, you've got a lot larger cushion to make sure that you are taken care of, not just while you are actively fighting, but you've got the financial ability to set yourself up for success after you retire. And this kind of goes hand in hand with what I talked to the other day about large corporations, making sure all the people at the top are well taken care of while they hang a lot of their lower ranking employees, the ones that are doing the work, out to dry financially. Take care of the people that are putting in the work, that are putting butts in seats, keeping the doors open, keeping the lights on. Those are the people that need to be making more money, not just now, but they need to be making enough money so that they can enjoy their retirement or even be able to retire in the first place. And that doesn't just go for, everyday jobs. That goes for athletes as well. Specifically MMA, where these guys don't make a lot of money. And I know the same thing can be said on behalf of women's sports as well, and even some of the, I wouldn't say more obscure, but not as popular men's sports. Pay these people enough so that they can take care of the needs they have and also set themselves up financially for the future. Because at the end of the day, I don't think that's too much to ask from anybody. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this episode of the Still Life Podcast. As always, for questions, comments, topic ideas, or suggestions, or if you'd like to become a sponsor of the Still Life Podcast, you can reach us, thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. That's thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining me today on the Still Life Podcast. We'll talk again soon.